Welcome back to the Armory series, the afterthoughts, since the full review is already on the main channel, and of course the pinned comment has even more details. Today, talking about the little SAR9 SC Gen 3, long requested by patrons and viewers alike. For the Gen 2, the Gen 3 finally came out. Changes to it included adding a rail slot and a change to the trigger guard geometry. Years back, I did a full article on the original SAR9, having talked to quite a few folks and learning all kinds of details about what all went into it. The original SAR9, often misquoted as a Glock clone, really is quite different inside, and the thing survived 50,000 rounds of 124 NATO in testing by its original design. Come around time Gen 3, we start to get features that the American consumer wants, like some sexy slide cuts and making it red dot ready. That same thing applies to this subcompact. Now, while it is roughly the size of a micro compact, sort of like the Canik MC9 line, it runs the same standard magazines, which means if you already have a SAR9 or you're just looking for a bigger magazine, you can run SAR9 mags in it, which is really cool. It is thinner than the SAR9 line because they ditched the 27 different possible grip combinations and just give you one grip. The build out that's needed for those interchangeable panels makes the gun a bit wider. On the full-size guns, this is a bit slimmer. The trigger is different, and that's something that I wasn't sure how I was going to feel about. I'm a big proponent that trigger feel is more important than weight. The only thing trigger weight really impacts for a proficient shooter is safety under duress or stress. And this subcompact does have a heavier trigger than the larger size guns. That can be a factor if you have difficulty controlling a trigger with light guns. The ratio of weight between trigger pull and gun is somewhat indicative of how likely you are to end up moving the gun while you pull the trigger. I didn't have issues with that, but my original range day with it wasn't the best. And this is why I put out that video called The Journalistic Struggle, because as a journalist, I feel it's important that I maintain those first impressions and don't do retakes or refilms or give you B-roll or any of the pretty, however, sometimes misleading stuff you see on a lot of other channels. So I had to publish that video intact as was, not performing as intended. I think it was a me day. To fix that, I took it back out on another day and had mounted the Osight SE, which is their side-loading enclosed emitter. This is circle dot. Love this optic. Great optic. It even looks right on this thing. Right? It's not too obnoxious. Either that or I'm just finally getting used to dots. Some fingerprints on the glass though. In that revisit and taking it back out to the range, did not have any of the accuracy struggles that I did the first time. So, did I have a bad day? Was it just because it was my first time shooting the gun? Maybe, we don't know. But overall, this thing performed really well, and I think it's a good alternative to a lot of the other subcompacts and even micros, because it is kind of micro-sized. That gives you a little bit more responsible of a trigger. I know, well, you guys are a mature audience. I realize that I don't have the influencer-seeking folks on GBGuns, so I can talk to you straight. Gun companies sometimes fall into chasing after that super light short trigger because everyone wants to talk about the trigger, and when people don't know much about guns, they say, how's the trigger? And then someone says, oh, this thing's got a great trigger, or look how well I did on the range with it. They end up falling into that chase, and then what ends up happening, in my opinion, is some of the triggers end up being a little bit on the irresponsible side for carry, especially for less experienced shooters. So I applaud SAR for having a little bit heavier of a trigger in this thing. I do have a patron who mentioned that they didn't like the trigger in theirs, and I can see that. That's definitely justifiable. It's not it's not my favorite for range use. However, I must remind myself that 20 years ago in Afghanistan, when under duress and being shot at, I don't recall ever complaining about the gritty, clunky, long, heavy GI trigger that was on my rifle when I fired back. Between adrenaline and between being focused on hitting the damn thing and not worried about triggers, that trigger wasn't a problem. So I assume, I've never been in defensive shooting as a civilian, but I assume trigger weight isn't going to be an issue in those scenarios either. What is important is a trigger that you can sense and you can identify where it's going to break, or one you can pull through smoothly. And this is one that pulls through smoothly easier than it does stage. For some shooters, that's a problem. I trained staging triggers, trapping triggers, shooting off reset. That's been ingrained in me so hard. I realize that nowadays the trend is the opposite. It's just to do a pull through and kind of get the shot off before you have a chance to throw the shot, if you will. And I see merits in that. I understand that. When this gun is fired that way, I don't feel any issues with the trigger whatsoever. So hopefully that kind of answers or helps identify whether or not this is a trigger that you're going to enjoy or not. If you're just going to pull it, it's a great trigger. If you want to stage and come to a wall and do all that, it's a bit of a challenge. Otherwise, really nice gun. I did not fall in love with it as much as I did the SAR9 SC Gen 3. And I think that just comes down to size and mass and weight. I've got banana hands, wear double XL gloves, I end up engulfing most pistols. Now that said, I can get all of my fingers on the gun thanks to the pinky rest that's on this magazine. So again, props to SAR. But I think just in shooting dynamics, smaller guns, of course, are never as much fun as larger guns. So that's one thing. The other is I did get a bit of a hot spot on my knuckle here, as happens to me sometimes on small guns when the back end of the tang beats on my knuckle. That's not to say it's going to happen to everyone. It's just how this particular gun paired with my hands. But I don't have any legitimate overall complaints about the gun. I think it's a good, solid gun, could fit for a lot of people as a good defensive carry gun and give you some of the styling, some of the pride, all of the reliability, and nice features that you get on the larger SAR9s in Gen 3, but in something that is a little bit easier to conceal, carry. It is a heavier gun. Again, that's one of those things where lightweight's easy to carry, lightweight's harder to shoot on the range, and the opposite also being true. So, does that make it kind of a, this is my one gun kind of purchase? Maybe. I personally would go for something larger as a first gun, but again, there are no real solid faults about this. Heck, it even comes with night sights, which saves you quite a bit. So let me know what your thoughts are, having seen, hopefully by now, the full review of this thing. Is it something you'd be interested in? Why or why not?